Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is out, and there have been a ton of questions about Groot during the movie. Vin Diesel, James Gunn have talked a lot about the character and why he evolved so differently from the original Groot in the first movie, so he didn't just grow back to the exact same size. We'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. Because Guardians of the Galaxy 3 just came out in theaters, we're also still doing the special giveaway for copies of the Guardians of the Galaxy video game. Thanks to the Eidos Marvel people for asking to sponsor the giveaway. The video game is a third-person, story-driven, action-adventure style game. You play as Peter Quill Star-Lord and are joined by different members of the Guardians of the Galaxy at different parts of the story. The story picks up a few years after the Annihilation Conquest storyline in Marvel Comics. That was the story where this particular roster of the Guardians came together for the first time. There were some Easter eggs for that in the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie. The continuity of the game borrows from both the comics and the Marvel movies, so his backstory is a little bit different in the game. The reason why he left Earth in the late 80s is a little bit different, but he is still from planet Earth. And some of the characters that you encounter in the game are characters that are appearing for the first time in live action in the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie. The present day of the game takes place in the early years of the Guardians of the Galaxy team. They've been together for a little while, but they do cover the events of his backstory during the beginning. The game does have different outcomes based on the choices that you make as Star-Lord throughout the story. The soundtrack is great. It's closer to James Gunn's 70s, 80s music from the movies. There is no DLC or microtransactions. It is a single-player game, and it is available right now on all the major video game platforms like the PlayStation Store, Xbox, Steam if you prefer PC gaming. I'll put a link for it up on screen and down in the description below, so be sure to check it out. And I will pick 3 giveaway winners randomly from the comments within the next few days and announce the winner during one of my Marvel videos next week. Careful for spoilers for the movie if you haven't seen it yet, but at the end of the movie, after the main Guardians team goes their separate ways and Rocket becomes their new captain, forming a new roster with Phyla-Vell, Adam Warlock, as well as Blurp, we see them on a foreign planet getting ready to save a group of townspeople, literally guarding the galaxy, Rocket says jokingly. We find out that enough time has passed since that final moment of the original team saying goodbye on Nowhere, like the small enough time jump for Groot to grow again to his full adult form, which Vin Diesel is calling Alpha Groot.
About how Thor will incorporate some of the Guardians of the Galaxy, which would be very interesting. Nobody knows, but maybe I shouldn't have said anything. But I only have 2 words about that character, and it is Alpha Groot.
He's meant to be like the Giga Chad version of himself, the final boss form, however you want to think of it. There were a lot of jokes about this last year, maybe even before that too, because Vin Diesel has been working on the movie for so long. He called him Alpha Groot pretty early on, and James Gunn responded to it saying, maybe he just means the most awesome version of Groot. Like he was trying to deflect, like, oh yeah, he definitely gave away a spoiler. Now he looks much closer to the size and strength of the rest of the leaders of his race in the comics, the Floor Colossus. They're called the Arbor Masters, like the most powerful members of his race. Now, he doesn't speak in the post-credit scene. Rocket just wakes him up because he's been taking a nap on the ground while they all wait for the animals who were threatening the townspeople to arrive, because they all joke the job is very easy, like they don't have to worry too much about it. Based on his size relative to the other Guardians compared to before, it looks like he's now at least twice as large as he was earlier in the movie. He's way stronger than the original Groot was in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I'll explain the difference between this Groot and the original Groot too. He even looks like he might be a little bit taller too. Mostly he's just way, way stronger. There's some other minor differences in their abilities too, James Gunn was talking about. Now that he's evolved again to the Alpha Groot form, his powers are mostly the same what you saw during Guardians of the Galaxy 3. He already demonstrated a bunch of different abilities. A lot of the toy merchandise was calling him the Kaiju version of Groot, but I think that was mostly a reference to the way that he was forming wings with his body, making himself super large, using all the limbs on his body like they were different arms. So he could already do a ton of things. The only additional powers it looks like he'd obtain at this new level of his evolution would be faster regenerative healing. Like James Gunn said, he already could regrow his body pretty fast during the regular movie when he was even smaller. Greater durability, a massive increase in strength, like he is huge. A higher level of chlorokinesis, which is their ability to control other plant life around him. And if it wasn't clear, they haven't quite done this in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies yet, but Groot can also heal other people's normal wounds. But if you had your arm chopped off, he couldn't regrow someone else's arm. There is a limit to that one. But like his body can generate healing chemicals. And also at the end of the movie, before he's grown into his Alpha Groot form, when you hear him say, "I love you guys," that's not meant to be another evolution as he's grown. Like, that's not a new power or anything like that. The special moment, James Gunn clarified, is that we're meant to view it as the audience watching the movie having become part of the Guardians family. Like, we've been with them for so long now, we're part of the family, and we can understand what he's saying when he says, "I am Groot," just like Peter Quill, Rocket, and the other Guardians. So when Rocket's Guardians team, Star-Lord, the other characters that are staying in the Marvel Universe come back and say like Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty, he'll still be saying, "I am Groot." It's not like he's going to be speaking full sentences every time he's on screen now. The "I love you guys" was just meant to be a one-off special moment. During the movie, there's a joke with the younger version of Gamora. She couldn't understand it because she wasn't close to Groot the way original Gamora became part of Groot's family, so to speak. So she keeps joking with all of them. They're just making up stuff that he says. Like, "You're just making it all up, aren't you?" Of course, we know that's not true. James Gunn talked about this all the way back during the first Guardians movie when it came out. Like, oh yeah, he's speaking normal sentences. It just sounds like he's saying, "I am Groot." The way they explain that twist in the comics is a little bit different, but there is an Easter egg for the comic book version of the explanation in the movie with the universal translator that won't work. In the comics, the reason why everyone can only hear "I am Groot" is because the universal translators don't work on the Flora Colossus language, so they just bug out and make it sound like he's only saying "I am Groot," when in fact he's speaking normal sentences in his language just like he does in the movies. The other funny side note about this too, about people dropping F-bombs in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, James Gunn revealed that Peter Quill's F-bomb in the movie was the first spoken F-bomb in a Marvel movie.
Okay, now what?
Open the door!
He said that he also joked about this with Kevin Feige, and even though Kevin Feige didn't try to stop him or anything like that, like they didn't make him remove it, he did tell James Gunn, "Do you want to be known as the director who had an F-bomb in his movie?" And James Gunn was like, "Oh, hell yeah, I would love to be known as the director that had an F-bomb in my movie." Going out in style, his last Marvel movie, going out like a boss. But the funny thing is, if you've been following all the stuff he's been saying about the movies behind the scenes, he's been doing it a lot lately the last week because this is his final Marvel movie, but he does stuff like this after all of his Guardians movies come out. And years ago, James Gunn revealed that teenage Groot, even when he was a little bit younger, cursed all the time. He had the foulest mouth. It's just that on screen, nobody like us, the audience, ever knew it because you could only hear him snicker a little and piss off the other Guardians, verbalizing it as "I am Groot." And they'd all yell at him like, "Hey, how dare you?"
Groot, put that thing away. Now, I don't want to tell you again. Groot.
I am Groot.
Whoa!
Hey,
You got some acorns on you, kid.
Ever since you got a little sap, you're a total D-hole.
So if you want to get technical, Groot was dropping F-bombs, other expletives, even worse things long before Peter Quill did. It's just that we didn't know it until James Gunn told us that was happening. Now, the important difference between the new version of Groot and the original Groot is that they're not meant to be the same character. The new Groot is meant to be kind of like the child of the original Groot, which is different in the comics. In the comics, Groot just regrows his body from little twigs, and they have a moment like they did at the end of the first Guardians movie during the Annihilation Conquest storyline, where Rocket takes a twig from the previous Groot and regrows it, and it's just the same Groot, regrown. But because MCU Groot now is the child of the original Groot, that's also why his personality is so different from the original Groot. Like, this Groot loves video games. They had a joke about that during the holiday special with the Game Boy. Even though he's super huge now, he's Alpha Groot, that will continue. Like, he will still love to play video games. He also seems much more social than the original Groot too. Like, he talks way more. He's way more casual with the rest of the Guardians. Most of the movie is meant to tell us Rocket's origin story, but they don't tell us the story of how he met the original Groot. James Gunn actually explained that the plot for the movie, Rocket's origin story, was originally part of a spin-off Rocket and Groot movie that he had developed way back when the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie was coming out. Like, I could do a spin-off movie about the origin of these two characters coming together. And that just evolved into the plot of the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie by the time he got to writing that. In the movie, we learned that he's a regular raccoon that the High Evolutionary evolves into his current form. Cool side note too, he's a raccoon from Earth, meaning that he's from Earth just like Peter Quill, so Earth is his home, technically. Maybe they'll address that in a future movie or there'll be some joke about it. I don't think he feels like Earth is his home though. In the comics, he originally came from Half-World, but there is an Easter egg for Half-World as his planet of origin during their lineup in prison during the first Guardians movie. There's also a bit of an Easter egg for Groot's origin story during that too. He's from a planet called Planet X. It seems like the way James Gunn is explaining this is that Rocket escaped from the High Evolutionary, then he went to Half-World where he continued to grow the rest of the way, grew to adulthood. Then he met the original Groot, they became friends, and then eventually ran into the other Guardians of the Galaxy and the team formed during that first movie. They might eventually tell the rest of the backstory for Groot's character too, because they don't really get into that during the movie. What happened is that he grew up as a normal member of the Flora Colossus race on Planet X. He didn't really get along with his other saplings, as they call them, like the younger members of their race. Eventually, he was banished from his planet for killing another member of his race, protecting another humanoid. After that, during Annihilation Conquest in the comics, that was the story where this Guardians roster came together for the first time, but in the comics. During that storyline, he was captured in Kree space and met Rocket in his prison. They became friends, and that's how they started working together, also joining the Guardians of the Galaxy during that run. The new Groot's relationship with Rocket is also a little bit different from the original Groot's relationship with Rocket, so they've kind of implied this in all of their movies that they've appeared in. The new younger version of Groot, even though he's super huge now, kind of views Rocket as his surrogate father the same way that Peter Quill thought of Yondu as his surrogate father. If you thought that scene of everybody getting snapped at the end of Avengers Infinity War was sad, it gets even sadder because even though we only hear him say, "I am Groot," as he's being snapped, James Gunn said that what he was really saying was crying out for his father, Rocket, like he literally called Rocket his father as he was being snapped away. So obviously he's much bigger now, much more capable of defending himself. Probably almost as powerful as, say, like Adam Warlock or Phyla-Vell Quasar here, but he still thinks of Rocket as his surrogate father the way that Peter Quill always thought of Yondu as his surrogate father. And in the comics, they also recently tied the origin of his race to the Gardener, Elder of the Universe, who's meant to be really powerful. So they could always tie that to his backstory in the MCU, like say that the Gardener is the character who created his race, the way that the High Evolutionary created the Sovereign race and a bunch of other races. James Gunn said that he did talk to Marvel about the next place that they'll be using this Guardians roster, and even though this was his last Marvel movie, Marvel would continue to use this team in other movies, even if they might not do Guardians 4, but he was also open to another director doing Guardians 4, like if Edgar Wright came and did a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Right now, it just seems like Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty is the next place we'll see this team. Like, at the end of the movie, when it says that tag scene of the legendary Star-Lord will return, they're mostly focused on Star-Lord's character. He's on Earth, so naturally he will be in Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty. That's the whole reason why he ends the movie on Earth, in addition to completing his character arc. But also, they want him to be on Earth so that he can be on that next Avengers team that faces the Dynasty of Kangs. There was a bunch of cool stuff that happened this week, so I'll try to make videos for everything as quickly as possible. I'm working on a new Daredevil Born Again Punisher video right now, too. Everyone click here for my full Guardians of the Galaxy 3 breakdown Easter eggs from the entire movie, and click here for my Guardians of the Galaxy 3 post-credit scene video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.